So, just for those who have joined, we're talking about coaching and possibility development. And for some context about possibility development, Dr. Knuckle defines it as the internal understanding of one's possibilities and then the developmental experience of actualizing them. So, how we're not only helping people understand what is possible, but then the developmental experience of moving through those experience, moving through life transitions. And one thing I didn't mention is that as he developed this framework, he also came up with this 5-step model of things that individuals do all the time: exploring your interests, prioritizing your interests, planning for action, taking action, and assessment. So things we do in our life anyway, but what would it look like if we provided this scaffolding for mentors and people who are supporting individuals, that scaffolding to help them discover their own possibilities? So that's some context on the possibility development framework that Albert is talking about. And so it makes me think of, in the fields that you've been in corporate America, and tend to be pretty high prestige environments, very results driven environments. We often see clients and individuals with this massive bias for action. Sometimes when we've worked with individuals, sometimes action is the issue. But then for some people, no issue with action. There are people who are excellent at getting things done, but if you ask them why they're doing it, they don't know. So what has it looked like in your coaching practice to shift from necessarily focusing on the action pieces of leadership and having them step back into exploration and prioritizing and figuring out what's important to them?
So, if I may, Jackie, I think you absolutely nailed the equation the way it is. And in enterprise environments, it absolutely is about being the expert in the room with the one with all the solutions. And you're rewarded for the solutioning, you're rewarded for that quick decisiveness, you're rewarded for speed, excellence, everything, except for the culture that you're creating, the psychological safety that you're providing your teams. And, in the spirit of dating myself, when I entered corporate America, right, nowadays there's a lot of emphasis and focus on employee engagement and reducing workforce burnout and addressing attrition and quiet quitting, right? So back in the day, 2 decades ago, it was all about aligning with the vision, delivering, being on budget, being on track, quality, etc. So you are so deeply entrenched and conditioned in that culture that you almost become blindsided and you become fractured in a way, right? And then you're a victim of it. And then you go through that whole journey of why am I so exhausted? What happened to me? Why am I not enjoying my work anymore, right? And your that busy trap then almost becomes an anesthetic in the sense that it gives you a reason, a license almost for emotional avoidance with those around you, because it's all about staying on track, being productive, hitting those, targets. And that sort of becomes, in my case at least, and my observation as well, it just becomes the way of interaction in our personal spheres as well. So we go through that journey of burnout, we hit that rock bottom, and then begins the healing. And I think now pivoting to your question that what does this look like? What is the difference between this corporate culture of high performance and speed versus coaching? Coaching, counterintuitively, growth happens when you take a pause. Growth happens when you're not constantly engineering and moving, on fast forward pace, but you are pacing yourself and you are engaging in introspection and you are building along with your skills, you're building self-awareness. And when you're operationalizing not just systems and processes, but your self-awareness. So eventually, I guess, the machinery is similar, but the mode of operation is counterintuitive, different, and I guess coaching is just what it should be because it heals you where you're at. It helps you optimize your own CPU, your own instrument, your own machinery. It helps you make your own relationships robust. And then you begin to hit those metrics that you want to as a person, as a professional, and as a member, civic member of our community.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is that there is a world where you can still achieve results, but not at the cost of yourself, your dignity, your sense of agency. But how do you negotiate that balance? So it seems like that's something that you prioritize in your coaching role. Albert, I'd love to hear about you two and your experience with this. We've talked about it many a time. What
Yeah.
that looks like for you.
Yeah, I echo plenty of what Nadia said, right? I mean, this highly charged environment where, we have super intelligence systems that are coming up and whatnot, right? AI and all those kinds of things, right? The goal often is the result we're trying to head towards, which is more efficiency, more productivity, right? And so we're fast charged into that. And many times we do it so blindingly fast, at least what I'm seeing through my clients, right? They're not aware sometimes of their own surroundings or even have agency for themselves. They're just on a mission to get that done, right? And get to the result. I think what I also see and recognize is that uh, when they do have the agency and the time and the space to really reflect and think, or even think future, think what's the possibility, right? Different types of ideas come through for them, right? When otherwise they don't have those ideas because they're following what their mission is and their goals are for the company. When they actually spend the time and they invest into thinking broadly about what they want to do going forward, is when actually growth happens, right? And we often say growth happens when we learn through problems and things of that nature, but also growth can happen when we think forward and we can actually think about what are the possibilities that we can have within terms of our career, in terms of kind of the next steps of what we want to achieve, right? So oftentimes in coaching, it's that ability to explore, but we want to, I get clients who are always at the action state and they can't revert back to explore and planning, right? They've gone beyond that. And so when I give them that opportunity to just take a couple of steps back, then that's when they start to realize some of the things they might be missing, whether it's developing the culture or it's developing their own an organization, the people are reporting to them, right? Or in many cases, it's what am I trying to do and how am I supposed to develop myself and where do I want to go, right? And oftentimes I get leaders who feel very selfish about that. And when I do open up with possibility development with them, right, it gives them that space to really sit down with all of their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, and even start questioning some of the things and some of the motives that they might even be involved into. And then actually realizing like, oh, maybe there is an alternate path for me, or maybe I am on the right path, but I'm not fulfilling my own journey or my own values and beliefs in that. Right. So that's where I come in, and that's usually I love having to find clients that are in that moment and then working them through and helping them navigate it.
I'm Thank you both. I think what I hear from you in your role, a lot of times it is facilitating that self-discovery, facilitating that space for growth. And I think I'm curious about how much of your role is managing expectations of what the purpose of coaching is, and how much of it do they have an idea? How do you manage those expectations? Coming up, I would love to talk with you all about the culture of advice giving and what that looks like, asking for career advice. But I think in at a time where sometimes people are just looking for answers, how do you manage those expectations? Do you experience resistance? What does that look like in your practice?
Yeah, I can share a real life story of a client of mine. And in fact, she was one of the stories I used on my TED talk as well. which was about rediscovering yourself through midlife and living to your best potential. So she is a mid-level managerial. She holds a mid-level managerial position, an extremely driven, brilliant person, very high energy. And she wanted to be on this fast track to just, accelerate her professional growth and hit all those leadership milestones. And she came to me because she saw in me someone who had been through a similar journey and acquired certain titles, etc. And now I'm providing advice professionally. So she thought that this is the perfect coach who can give me this heady concoction of, leadership 101, fast track, get there soonest, fastest, most efficiently. And in just getting to meet her and through our approach, because in coaching, there is no prescription involved. Coaching is not so much a practice to me as much it is partnership, thought partnership, reflection partnership, accountability partnership, right? And what I gave her was actually an antidote that instead of expediting, we need to pause and we need to slow down. And there was a lot of resistance, right? So to clients like that, because you need their buy-in, you need their support upfront. They need to trust you. And some of that comes because they're working with you for a reason as well, right? So there is that inherent trust that you need to constantly scale and build, but you also need to, we are humans and we are rational beings and we have that, intelligence in us, and that needs to be satisfied as well. And one example that I use, again, relevant to somebody, whether they are a technology expert or enthusiast, or whether it's diet or skin or whatever. So I will find a relevant part of their life and illustrate to them. And what I used with this client, because I knew her history, is that when we are looking to, as midlife women, trying to look your best and you want to do that outwardly, right? Then we invest in skincare and treating your hair or whitening or tanning or whatever. And that's instantly visible, right? But when you're trying to heal your gut health, you're trying to fix that colony of biome within your gut, right? That's inner work. It's not visible outside immediately that you did this treatment or your hair looks a certain way. No, you are elevating and enhancing that inner gut health, that inner brain gut connection. You are rejuvenating yourself. You are working on your sleep cycles, all of that. And this is deep work and it's not very glamorous, but the rewards are far more sustainable and long lasting. And she was able to see that. And then, through many experiments and through many reflective exercises, and some of them even painful, that if you are known, you acknowledge your impatience, right? You are going to consciously observe how your impatience just is trying to burst out and hit the roof. And in that moment, you're going to regulate to the best of your ability self-awareness and see with this self-awareness now as an active tool how you navigate this situation as opposed to how it may have transpired in the past, right? So through the practical satisfaction of somebody's basic human intelligence and these exercises and experiments that help you observe yourself in the dynamic of the moment and how that's progressing for you. And very soon the transformation becomes visible and, they see how the building blocks are all stacking up one against the other. And that leadership is not just about milestones or titles, but it's about your growth as a person. Leadership is not so much a title as it is a quality. So with scientific satisfaction as well as personal experience and tangible strategies and techniques has been my sort of arsenal of tools, and it has worked well in almost every case with trial and error, with changing things up. But basically, this is the approach that delivers for me.
That's great. Thank you, Navi. Yeah. And coach is more guided, right? So I don't prescribe any set of methods or any answers to them. They, in most cases, have the answers within them, but they need a partner to actually discover what those answers are for them, or at least have a sounding board, or maybe an advisor or a mentor to at least give them some idea whether or not they're going the right direction. So coach guided, sometimes what we do is we'll help them navigate that journey together because they don't know what path they're on sometimes, right? And so I don't come into it explaining what my experiences are, or what I understood is to be correct or wrong. I can use that as peripheral knowledge or as reference, but I focus on their journey because it's not mine, right? And oftentimes, when they don't understand what the answers are, I help walk them through what are the options and then do that unveiling. That's when the actual growth happens because they start to realize what are some of the possibilities that are available for them. And so to me, it's not something that again, I don't prescribe that. It's something that the customer comes into the session with, something that they want to have a conversation around, something they want to work on, and then of course that could be all part of an ultimate plan of where they want to go near and long term. And I help guide them and navigate them through that journey.
Thank you. So what I've heard throughout this entire thing is how much you both lean in on your personal experience, but it's not the thing that infiltrates the work. And so, as you both have coached executives, I am curious about leadership, particularly in this context of being that thought partner. And I think many senior individuals, advanced individuals, they find a lot of leverage of having the person with the most answers, and will, if somebody comes to them asking for support, they might default to advice giving. And so, but oftentimes the advice isn't necessarily what they're looking for. And so how do you support leaders from making that shift if you observe that they are that expert in the room? How do you make that shift? And then I would also love to know more about your own experiences of shifting, if you've had to shift at times from being that expert and wanting to be like,
Hmm.
no, I need you to do this. Like knowing, but what does that experience look like for you, and what is required to make that shift from expert in the room to partner alongside them?
Yeah, I think a conversation I have upfront is just navigating, helping them take me back through their own life journey and experiences. And what sort of leadership has nurtured them to become their best and deliver their best, right? What leadership has panned out favorably for them and helped them develop in their own journey? And what leadership burnt them and curbed them and curtailed their own development? And what is the quality of a leader or a type of leader that they were able to trust, right? And this sort of starts putting it's not meant to be a direct self introspection, which can be a little intimidating as well, because you're not dissecting and assessing yourself, but you're looking at others on your journey, right? And then in discussing and in sort of digesting and making sense of how different leadership personalities and styles affected you, it naturally opens up that gateway to do a self-reflection on how are you as a leader and how are you leading, right? So when you were given instructions and when you were given strong prescriptions, right? How did that make you feel? Could you deliver your best? Could you develop your innovation, right? As opposed to times when you were given charge, you were given responsibility, you were made accountable, but then you were also given the support. Your leader also had your back. So that helped you develop yourself in your abilities, your capabilities, and become better self-managed and really enhance and develop yourself to your ultimate potential. So growth leadership is not really about, again, having a certain power, authority, but leadership is about nurturing a team of leaders around you. I wouldn't even say under you, around you, right? And being thought partners and being partners in action and productivity and not just partners in crime. So approaching things at that level and seeing, what has influenced them, what has shaped their own journey, what do they admire, what qualities do they respect. This then starts very subtly putting together the framework of the kind of leader they want to be. And then we do the deeper shadow work of, so what needs to shift? Where are you not pleased with yourself today? What would your team? And then, those ahas start happening one at a time. And then we come up with some broader plans, which are more long term. We come up with some short term plans. We come up with behavioral changes. And honestly, once there is this self realization, just so much of that BS instantly drops that you start seeing a different and innate side to the person that is so much more compassionate, authentic. It was already there, those qualities. I'm not saying that as a coach, I suddenly manifest, magically infuse those qualities are there. But in this combined work that we do, the layers are peeled off and those qualities now have a chance to exhibit themselves. So this is how I approach it in the context of their own journey, how others have influenced them, and then bringing about these inner insights through introspection, reflection, and coming up with what that new vision, that new version of your self should look like, that you want it to look like.
Absolutely. It's like perspective, like you're facilitating perspective taking too, of like empathy, of thinking of like, how have I felt in these positions when I've been led or not led? And how has that shaped how I might be, what has modeled to me affects what I model for other people as a leader.
And it's a safer way as well, rather than just coming up front with that 360 assessment and telling you all the horrible things that people think about you and have to say about you. Here, it's self-discovery. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Albert, thoughts?
Yeah, I oftentimes I have to check myself because I'm somebody that likes to problem solve also. And so, lots of times I want to dive right in with them, tackle the problem, understand it, give them some solutions, right? So I often have to stop myself and also remind them that I'm coaching them, not the problem, right? That we're not here to solve that problem. We're actually wanting to understand what is it that's challenging you? What's a concern for you? How should you be present in this situation, right? What are some of the qualities that you want to demonstrate? What are some of the skills that you want to show or even develop through these processes and through these programs, right? And so I have to oftentimes find where they are at. Sometimes customers or clients don't know where they're at, and you have to dig a little bit deeper with them to understand and define what stage are they in their career, what stage are they in relative to their company, right? What stage is there even the organization beneath them at, right? And then defining what that stage is, and then we can articulate, okay, this is the moment that I'm at, this is the level I'm at, and then sitting with that, right? So sometimes it could be difficult to find or meet the client where they're at, right? And so you have to start there, and then from that point, what's the next step in the journey for them, their organization, and for their team, right? And so lots of times I have to help them create what that brand is for themselves, and help them understand kind of, okay, well, if this is what got you here, and this is the experiences and the knowledge that you have, is that brand consistent, and does that need to carry forward, or is that brand going to change? And so understanding some of their values, their beliefs, their knowledge, and what constitutes where they're at today helps, but then also realizing what's the next chapter in that, right?
And I'll jump in again momentarily because you helped me just recognize times where I have had this very urgent need to be prescriptive myself and just rush in because I feel like, I have the solution to your problem or situation right now and I'm bursting. I must share it with you. And there's a process of journey of learning through your own sort of adventures and pitfalls as well, right? So because we are constantly growing, I'm sure, Albert, you feel the same, that just because we are now coach, it doesn't mean that we are know-it-all or seen-it-all, etc. There is constant learning, and we are each learning from our clients through every interaction, every experience, right? So one aha that I personally experienced for myself was with a teen student client of mine. And we agreed that now we were at a stage that, she was in agreement that we needed some more time with nature and some more time outdoors and, just to let go and decompress the mind. And that could look like nature walks. So we had identified to this part. And now I was trying to work with her for her to find the most optimal time in her schedule to do it. So initially it was a lot like I wake up and then I go, and she was a high school student. And then, I have this and I have these classes and tutoring and whatever. And then session is coming to an end, and I don't want to end this without having a plan in place. So here I go. I said, how about when you come back from school and before your first lesson or before your snack or after your snack? And then she said, look, coach, but the best time for me is when I'm walking down from school, which I knew she was just a few blocks, her home was a few blocks away from school. I can just go to the park and just put my backpack there and just walk around the park and maybe go and be on the swing or just hang out with other people, other kids that I might know over there, and spend some time there before I come back home. And then I can spend time with my mom, who finishes up work at that time, and then go to my room, refresh whatever, and begin my evening schedule. So I think that's going to work for me, coach. And I was like, wow. And here I am. I think I know how she should structure her day, etc. And the lesson that it sort of established for me is that my job is to, and my intention is to encourage people to problem solve for their own self and in their own unique way, and not like me. I am not trying to create another version of me who will think like me and who will solution like me. And when I try to provide solutions too prematurely, that's what I'm doing. And I need to become self-aware. So that was a learning moment for me. Yeah, but the
Yeah.
impulse is there. I have to say guilty.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, this is how we built our career too, as well, right? And so I'll piggyback on this thought as well and add to it that oftentimes through self-discovery, clients will share with me their deeper motivations, and it's not necessarily professional, right? Certain milestones or titles or roles or levels. And I have a client who runs finance for a significant company, and her motivation is actually sailing. She wants to spend more time and balancing her time out in the open water. It was a complete revelation to me. I wasn't even expecting this, but her career allowed her to afford those kinds of luxuries. And so when we started focusing on those motivations, right, then we can start turning into some of the things that she was fearful of that were going to take away or compromise that motivation, right? And that was a huge component into what she wanted to do ultimately at the end of how she wanted to end off her career eventually, right, was to be in this other kind of lifestyle that she felt was her career was going to allow her to do that, right? And so once she was able to understand kind of how do we get there, not necessarily the end result, but how do we get there, and how does that identify with the type of leader or type of character or a type of value system that she might have at work, it was really helpful because then I could have easily came in and said, here's the solutions, here's what you got to do, and create a step forward plan, when really it was something that had to be part of her process and something she had to own and drive for herself, which is what motivated her, right, to be successful in her career.
This this is something I did not send you, but something comes to mind of just this is what an intersection between counseling and coaching looks like when as a counselor and a therapist and as coaches, you're not only a professional going into this work, you're also a human. You're the person in the room too. And it makes me think of Dr. Mike Nuckola, who created possibility development. He wrote a book in about 1998 called with Dr. Sharon Ravitch, who's also at Penn, called Matters of Interpretation. And he talks about the helping professionals and their role and how interpretation, it talks about interpretation, obviously, but interpretation is an ethical act. And this idea that part of supporting individuals is and helping them transform, he calls it reciprocal transformation. There has to be a willingness from the person in that other position, in the helping position, also to have that willingness to transform and to channel self-discovery in their own way as they're facilitating the self-discovery of others. And I think that's so real in the therapeutic space. It's what we call countertransference, where my role as a therapist is for like whether I have this emotion to fix, where is that coming from? It is my responsibility to manage that because it affects centering the client. But I'm curious, I'm so curious about this idea of you show up as a person, you show up as a professional, and then also when you connect with the client, you connect with their struggles and feeling like some of the experience is very similar. I'm curious, how have you been able to serve as that container for them, like emotionally, as they deal with fear and deal with anxiety, but then also knowing the scope of your expertise and the bounds of your role, and thinking of like what happens when the barriers to action are something that is blocked by something deeper that might need another type of intervention.
I see two, facets here that I would like to address, and I don't know whether that was intended in your question or not, but that's, how I'm receiving this or assessing this situation. So when you mention the word barriers, and like I was sharing with you before we started the meeting, that the resonance between the possibility development network and one of my own core offerings, which for me it is breaking boundaries, is coming out of those barriers, coming out of those limitations. However, with due respect, right, there is material reality as well to be considered. And we cannot, for goodness sake, over romanticize self-agency or developing every possibility that your heart desires or smashing every boundary or barrier that curtails you. Not possible, right? There is time, there is context, there are responsibilities, there are financial constraints, health constraints, whatever, so many factors. So within this whole paradigm and this algorithm, the exercise that I undertake with my client is, so what is immovable? What's absolutely, static and it needs to stay put, at least for now, right? Where do you have the wiggle room? What can you negotiate? And what has gone unaddressed for way too long? You're not even questioning it. You're just doing it because it was a practice once upon a time, it served you, or it was given to you, and you adopted it mindlessly, and you're just in that cruise control. So let's break that pattern, right? So when you talk about barriers, this is one of the initial exercises that we do in order to understand and put context on each barrier. And to take away that burden that every single barrier, not just because we're doing this program and I'm your coach and we're going to smash through it, let's put this in perspective, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is that when there is some deep-rooted, let's just say trauma, or deep-rooted experiences, right, or inhibitions, or psychological fractures, or whatever, that inhibit the person to take on this outward movement, growth movement, right? Then there's two things I do. One, take a deliberate pause, because coaching is all about creating that future vision of yourself, dropping the baggage, and then in an incremental manner, coming into becoming the vision that you have for yourself. That's what coaching is. But if you're not ready, if you're too burnt, if you're too scattered right now, you're not able to put yourself together so that you can even start taking those baby steps, then we will just pause here and we will do more healing work together. One other, aspect about myself, at least my approach is that I'm not going to keep you on the trauma treadmill forever. And this is what I say to my clients, which means that we're not constantly going to rehash the past and what happened and this one, so and so did this or that was done to me, blah, blah. That trauma has a certain role because we understand where we need to heal ourselves more. Which areas of ourselves do we need to tend to more, right? That's the role of that trauma. But we don't need to constantly be stuck in that spiral. So we are all about forward building. But if you're not ready as yet, right? So we will just do more healing work right now and then come up with small steps and move out of here. And that has worked. But there have been also cases where the emotional dysfunction, the depressive symptoms were so strong that I needed an expert to work with me and partner with me. And again, as an ethical coach, and ethics in coaching is not about having that control for the client's future journey or resurrection, but it's also about widening that circle of care in the best interest of the client. So on several occasions, I've worked with that, and mostly they already have a therapist. And on some occasions, through my guidance, they went and they got a formal clinical therapist. But in most of the scenarios, they already had a therapist. And I worked with that therapist, partnered with them, because you can't keep your client. I cannot keep my client in the state of push and pull, where the therapist is taking them, keeping them stuck in the past and doing all the healing, and I'm propelling them forward. Now, build that vision, create that future self of yourself. It's not good. It's such a tussle, right? So I have paused and I have let the therapist do their work, and the client has come back to me when they are ready. So both, I guess, so honoring barriers is important and not over romanticizing everything. And also understanding your own limitations and the clinical needs, respecting and honoring the clinical needs of a client, and working, through that process as well.
Do you want anything to add to that, Jackie?
Well, I was
I
just
see your
thinking,
face there, and I'm like, I know
was
you
thinking,
want to. Yeah, I know you have
no,
a comment.
because I was thinking, because I was like, the Albert and I have worked very closely and has seen me in those states of the struggling with the uncertainty, but there are skills that you both have foundationally that I believe are so essential to helping people in their growth. I think um, sometimes people come to coaches and might not even know what they need. But from my experience in the coaching realm, and even as a therapist, thinking of like, what are the buckets of support that typically providing? You're talking, Albert, of your like disseminating information about what your experience maybe was, or what you know about a topic, or disseminating or connecting people with resources. There is uh, facilitating self-discovery and taking perspective. Maybe they come in with an issue and you prompt them to view it from a different lens. Accountability, Navi, as you were talking about, of holding a mirror, finding that cognitive dissonance between this is where this is where you say you want to go, this is what the current behavior is, where is that gap? Then a lot of what I do with my clients is addressing barriers, like we've talked about barriers of the challenge, like what are the material realities that are affecting you, keeping you feeling stuck. And for some of my clients who live in chronic pain, sometimes it's making the to-do list before the to-do list of making the doctor's appointments. What's the phone number? Sitting with them. And then there's this final one of just being that human in the room. So I think that these skills, and I think that grounded ethic, I think sometimes our leaders, they want to help in that way, and providing advice might be the way they feel like they do it, but sometimes they don't know how. When what I'm hearing from you both is you're doing things in these 5 buckets. So I'm curious, what would it look like? What does it look like to bring this understanding of supporting people to
Mm.
the masses, especially during a time of uncertainty and urgency? Um, what does that look like?
Yeah, I can go. So really quickly, just going back to the previous topic, and really quickly, in terms of barriers, right? Oftentimes or I have clients where we get into situations where we're stressed. We don't know, the path forward. We don't understand, and we're lost, right? This is often what I get as a theme from clients walking into conversations with them. What's in your control? Let's start from that point. What can you do for yourself? And put you into that seat, because oftentimes they're waiting for instruction or guidance or direction, and they get lost in ambiguity, or they don't know what the next step is for them. And I say, okay, well, let's take out the barrier and let's put you in control first. What can you do? Then from there, I actually remove the constraints. What if you didn't have budget concerns? What if you didn't, what if you had all the authority? What if you were the person leading this? What would that look like? And how would you guide that? Right? And so sometimes removing those barriers allows them the space to really re-energize and think forward, and then discover areas where they might have strong interest or even have the necessary or requisite skills or knowledge to even push it that direction, but they didn't think about it at that moment in time. Right. So when I think of removing the barriers, I think of literally just what if you just started with none, right? And that allows them to really introspect and really think objectively sometimes as well. The other part is I believe in this continuum of care. I don't practice as a therapist. I'm not licensed for that, but I'm very upfront about that. But oftentimes, what I get told by my clients is that coaching can be part of the therapy for them, right? Whether it's prescribed or not, it can be part of their therapy because it gives them an outlet to have conversations with somebody that they trust, right? And it's somebody that they can openly discuss topics and openly discuss issues, and but not have the therapeutic lens on and telling them that this might be, part of the diagnosis, but more of them allowing to be free of their mind and free of their abilities, right? And to be able to uh, predict even and even focus on some of the things they want to do going forward, right? And so I like to be thought of as someone that can be integrated into that continuum of care, right? But not someone that's going to provide them therapy per se.
Absolutely. I like that better than the question I asked. So I see that we have 15 minutes left. I would love to bring the rest of the group in to if they have any questions, would like to share out. This has been such an enriching conversation and hopefully the first of many. So you can either put it in the chat, you can unmute yourself. Happy to facilitate that.
First of all, thank you to our guests, Navi and Albert. Appreciate it very much. You offered us a lot of insights. And sorry, I'm off camera. I'm working with a phone that's struggling to hang on to its battery life. So I appreciate your patience with that. Um, so, as someone that is really not very knowledgeable about the field of coaching, this has been very enlightening because I've been able to consider things that I hadn't considered before. Navi, I especially appreciated your very holistic approach to your work. You know, thinking about health, physical health, as well as how that lines up with career goals and directions. Um, so this question is just for Albert and Navi, both of you. So, do you ever, as professionals, get to a place where you say to yourselves and then your client, you know what, I think that we might want to bring in another partner, or you might want to consult this person for that particular piece of advice? In other words, thinking of it as a division of labor. And I'm curious as to how you might do that kind of management of let's say, lanes, or
Mhm.
let's say
Mhm.
maybe just distribution of expertise, so to speak, how you might work with others to help your client. Thanks.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, thank you for that question. Very, very, I guess, thought-provoking. And again, correlating that, your question with my own experiences. On many client journeys, we've had to engage external experts for specific areas of expertise that I don't naturally carry with myself as a leadership, wellness, or a life coach, right? So again, where deeper therapeutic care, clinical care is needed, we go and we engage with the clinical therapist, a clinician who can help them at that scientific level. When they are looking to better a certain health metric, right, then we engage with that particular health expert, whether it's about diet, whether it's nutrition, or whether it's some clinical health condition as well. If they're looking to excel in their career and there are some technical skills required, right? Because yes, and I love to say this and I completely believe in this, that soft skills are actually the hardest skills to acquire. But the hard skills, the technical skills also have their due place and which needs to be acknowledged and honored, right? So for your job and especially for you to progress yourself in your career hierarchy, right, you might require some technical skills, which are current gaps. And for that, you need to work with that right expert or enroll in a appropriate course or take on a certain certification. So in that capacity, yes, I've opened up this avenue and, the mind of my client that they need to work on these dedicated areas. And for that, we need to seek out the relevant provider or the relevant expert.
Thank you. Very insightful.
Yeah, Andrew, great question. I follow along the same type of belief and philosophy as well. I mean, I think ultimately it's up to the client to kind of express what avenues and direction they want to go. And as being part of their co-pilot and part of guiding them, figuring out what level of effort, what level of care and attention they need, right? So oftentimes, right, I have clients that might have already disclosed they have a therapist or a psychologist, or some clinical or medical assistance. Some are it's purely education, as Navi has mentioned, but other times too, right? They might have other types of specialty coaches, and that's okay, right? They might have a coach for their career. They might have a coach for or a mentor in their life, or a couple of mentors that are helping them with their professional skills and whatnot, or even just in their day-to-day work. That's perfectly okay, right? I think there's a time and place for everybody to have this integrated health system around their clients. What I want to do is understand what can I be an assistance to them, and what are some of the specific things that they want to work with a coach like myself for leadership or for talent development or what have you, right? And so we want to make sure that there's a time and place for everyone's role that we can fit, and we don't overstep each other's boundaries, right? I don't necessarily have to speak and be in relationship with their other care providers. I just want to make sure that they understand what's the expectations in the coaching relationship with me, right?
Again, very helpful. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know if I speak for anyone else, but you know, it seems that coaches can be quite broad, or they can be, as you said, Albert, quite specialized. And it really gives me a stronger sense that that is itself a competency of coaching, about how to work with others in an effective way. Very interesting. Thank you.
Those barriers, and it's a great word, Jackie, the barriers that get in the way for our leadership excellence and potentiality. And how do we identify those? We don't, perseverate on those, of course, but we move through them, we heal them, and we look at it maybe even through the lens of psychoneuroimmunology and how it's affecting the body and health, and then creating that model to move to the future and have that possibility development. So I see, like, in this new space of coaching and therapy, and I'm seeing a lot where there's a lot of I don't know if you would, I guess maybe like advertising or um, ideas around therapists becoming coaches and taking on this kind of coaching role. And, when I did grad school 10 years ago, we were like, no, we're not doing coaching and, we're therapists and that kind of thing. And it's really interesting to see how this whole thing is coming together and working together. So I'm curious to know like thoughts, ideas as we seek to the future and bring people to their absolute best. How does that look from your perspective?
Yeah,
Whoever wants to answer.
Christine and Gagan, yes, thank you for this question. And, I would love to hear from Albert as well. But my take is that, yes, absolutely, the two have to coexist because they're not a replacement for each other, right? So both are essential and both have a role to play and a problem or a certain area to solve in this person's journey. But I also, again, in my thought process, I see a certain timeline or life cycle where these have to be interjected or injected in the person's recovery and growth. So the therapy element I see more as front loaded, because if you are dealing with trauma and if you have some deep psychological wounds in yourself, whether that's at the emotional level or your relationships or your self-image relationship to self, etc., right? If that is very deep rooted and deep seated, and that is actual trauma that you have carried with yourself through years and relationships, then the therapy work has to be front loaded and we need to provide time and space and proper procedure and practice and protocol for that healing to happen. And then I see this intermediate time where both can coexist, where therapy is still helping you and giving you that the care that you need, but then coaching is also now beginning to open your mind to future possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So done is not done as yet, but very soon we want to get to a point
Mm-hmm.
where done will be done.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what's next, right? So
And
then I see this overlap, and then I certainly don't imagine that therapy would need to, continue forever, at least not for the same problem on a regular basis. I
Mhm.
definitely see that therapy aspect scaling back. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I think that even in the therapeutic model, it's we are doing that, psychopathology and understanding, and everyone has, like there's for all of us, it's a matter of degree as to how much we need to do that front-loaded work, right? Because we all carry into adulthood things from our childhood that, kind of need some cleaning up. And those become, as I see them, those barriers to the potentiality. So it's like I'm just trying to understand and settle within myself how to be able to create that model for my clients so that, as I see it as a therapist, like we do what's called vision questing, okay, now that we're at this great space and you're healed and life is good and you're operating on wonderful cylinders and everything's cleaned up, what does that look like now? There's this vacancy of space within the psyche that we need to now fill, right? And what do we do? How do we fill that space? And oftentimes clients are like, well, I don't even know who I am. Like, I don't know this part of myself. I don't know what to do with this vacancy. And so we have to do this kind of self-discovery of, well, what is it that you really like to do? Like you were talking about like a nature walk or something, helping clients. So I'm just trying to play around with, which is why I'm here. How can we create a model where we're also bringing therapy and coaching together in one practice? So we don't have, we have that one person that can provide the forward thinking and the backward thinking and the healing all in one. So I'm looking at this hybrid model, like how can we do that?
Well, I was just thinking briefly, just something that comes to mind for me is where the lived experience comes in. Because as clinicians, we're so limited in that area
Mhm.
and like not like the self-disclosure. And I wonder if with like the corporate background too, and still having those facilitation skills, that is also of use. I work in integrative care and community mental health, and um, working with clients in recovery, you have the peer specialists too, like the ones who have gone where they've gone. And so
Yeah,
I'm curious too of what does that look like?
you mean in this model, like in this coaching therapist model? Yeah. It's an emerging space, so I think we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak, and what does it look like in real time with our clients? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think while the system catches up, right, and the model sort of establishes and formalizes, I think in practice and in essence, we're already beginning to experience that in our individual practices.
Yeah, I think now we're just
before it becomes something formal with a name and a label.
Yeah, Christine, it's an interesting thought, right? Because oftentimes, at least with my clients, they want analysis. They want to know what's wrong with them. They want something that is prescriptive or descriptive of what it is that they're challenged with. And oftentimes in coaching, we may not have those labels or even that construct to tell them, okay, this is what's wrong with you. And in many cases, I don't even go there with them, right? But what I want to do is understand how is that affecting them,
Yeah.
right? So if you're stressed out, you have anxiety, you don't know what you're lost, how is that affecting you and what you're doing? And oftentimes this blends into their personal life as well. And this is where I really think whether it's front loading or not, I think it's continuous, where they do need a partner that can help them analyze that and help understand what it is that's happening deeply rooted inside. And if for as a coach to allow them to outpour that type of description and information to share with somebody who can put some things in practice or create a practice for them, right, going forward that is pragmatic for them to at least try certain things, right, and have a coach there that they can bounce some of those ideas off of, right. But the therapy allows them to channel back into this is what I think what my therapist is telling me what's wrong with me and how I can analyze that and be resident with it. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to say it, Albert, for sure. And it really, as I hear you talking about it, it's just I see this roadmap, of this is where I've been. This was the space with which I traversed, and this is where I want to go. And I think having that information is really valuable because I think in the human psyche, there's just an intrinsic desire to understand how did I get here? And for all of us, it's just a matter of degree, right? At what point where in our history did something perhaps, occur or whatever? I think having that information, at least I see it in my practice with my clients that, um, oftentimes I hear, wow, that really makes sense. There's this kind of dovetail experience of what they're feeling and what they're living. And then having that, they're like, okay, it settles the system enough to be able to contemplate and visualize what's coming for the future. And I guess the implicit question in this is how does that look at the base, as we're building uh, this plane.
The need is there and it is just so raw and so real. And a conversation right now, Albert and Christine, it just helped me reflect back on my journey. And I have gone through the process and then the realization dawned on me. There are moments, despite having been a life coach during that, duration as well, there are moments where I myself underwent experience of panic, similar to experiencing panic attacks. Has it happened to me as a coach myself? Oh, yes, it has. Did I realize it at the moment? I did not.
Yeah.
I've gone through depressive cycles my own self. And why I was in that lowest abyss, I did not realize it. Now, because I had the skills and because I have the practice and because I have the commitment and I've dedicated my life, somehow with grace and through whatever my own design, I was able to overcome that cycle and then in retrospect, look back and recognize what was happening to me. But had I had an active coach that I did not, right? The coach could have partnered with me and helped me recognize and then helped me remediate and heal myself. So I guess there's an absolute relevant and very real need for this model in our system, healthcare system.
Thank you. Well, I see the time, and I just want to thank everybody for this enriching experience. And we would love for you to keep connected with us at the Global Possibility Network. We have a monthly speaker series. where we are engaging practitioners from all over. Dr. Knuckla is typically here as well, but graduation, it's a buzzin', and he is a department chair among other things. So I know he was looking forward to this. We are going to post this video on YouTube as well. But I want this conversation to continue 100%.
Thank you, Jackie, for hosting. And thanks again to our two guests. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take a visit to gpnnetwork.org if you want to stay in touch.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you,
Thanks.
Jackie.
Thank
you,
you.
Albert.
Thank you,
Really
Jackie.
enjoyed and
Thank you,
learned.
Navi.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take care.
Navi. Thank you,
Yep.
Albert. It was really nice meeting you both, and I wish you the best of luck in your careers and help ease human suffering.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting you, Christine.
Likewise. Good luck all.
Yeah.